Good evening, I'm Don Arleth and welcome to Flash News. We have an extended program for you tonight, so let's get started. It was a day later than planned, but the same continued work on legislation to help fight the coronavirus. Earlier, the work on the bill was postponed at the request of Civic Platform. Now the Prime Minister is appealing for a cross-party, bipartisan agreement.
Doctors, nurses, medical rescuers, the whole health service. Heroes of the fight against the coronavirus. Among others, the government prepared new regulations for them. We are raising up to 200% the basic salary, including the deductions for those who are sent by the voivode to work with COVID-19. Doctors in quarantine are to be paid 100%. Penalties for unintentional mistakes made during the treatment of coronavirus-infected patients will also be abolished. The government is prepared for the black scenario, that is, possible further increases in the disease and prolonged work on the vaccine. I propose that we all use our most important vaccine, and this vaccine is called solidarity. The opposition has proposed its laws. The left wants, amongst others, stricter regulations on wearing masks, the Polish People's Party, additional money for doctors, and the Civic Coalition, facilitating the purchase of medical equipment by local governments. Law and Justice and the Polish People's Party senators wanted to speed up the proceedings for the upper house. This will happen. We will take care of it from 4 p.m. on Monday, as soon as possible. However, the Speaker of the Senate does not exclude that the law will return to the same with amendments.
10,040 new coronavirus cases. This is the highest number of daily infections in Poland since the beginning of the pandemic. Also, 130 people have died. The coronavirus is becoming increasingly dangerous, and the government is introducing further measures.
A 42-year-old teacher infected with COVID-19 died in Krakow. In this music school in Toruń, coronavirus was confirmed in the case of 2 teachers and 3 students. At the moment, 134 students are in quarantine, as well as 6 teachers. Second and third classes of music, which have a general program like high school classes, have remote teaching according to regulations. Unfortunately, we have a growing wave of the epidemic, so let's keep all safety standards, let's wear masks and keep distance, because this can protect us against infection. In hospitals, more and more COVID-19 infected patients are arriving. Almost 9,500 beds out of all 17,000 are taken by COVID-19 patients. An increase of the number of beds is to be provided by temporary hospitals like the one being built on the National Stadium. Such hospitals are to be built in all voivodeships. We have declarations, together with the indication of specific locations of nearly 1,000 extra beds. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the government has increased the testing capacity of laboratories from 4 to 80,000. With the increasing number of infections, the Ministry of Health does not rule out further restrictions.
COVID-19 is still on the warpath in Europe and beyond. The Czech Republic, Italy, and many other countries report further increases in daily infections. In order to combat the pandemic, numerous countries decided to tighten restrictions.
A sudden increase of infections was reported in the Czech Republic. Almost 12,000 infections within the last 24 hours. This is the biggest increase since the beginning of the pandemic. The increase is enormous, and unfortunately the measures we have taken last week are not working, and we are not flattening the curves, and we also have a huge increase of hospitalized patients. Therefore, the authorities are tightening restrictions. On Czech streets, masks are obligatory. From tomorrow on, stores will be closed except for those with basic products. In Spain, 6 million people have already been isolated by a sanitary cordon. The Ministry of Health alerts. I appeal to everyone to be vigilant and not underestimate the problem. Italy. In Lombardy alone, 4,000 infections in the last 24 hours. This is a new, dramatic record. From tomorrow on, a curfew is to apply in the region from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. It will be possible to leave the house only for a justified reason. Shopping malls will be closed on weekends, except for pharmacies and grocery stores with essential goods. In Ireland, a lockdown. Restaurants, pubs and shops are closed. The authorities recommend that people work remotely and do not travel more than 5 kilometers away from their homes.
Morning, Prime Minister.
The UK. In Manchester, Boris Johnson ordered the highest level of restrictions.
We don't want to go back into a national lockdown with all the damage, social and economic, that can do, unless we absolutely have to.
To date, more than 40 million people worldwide have been infected with COVID-19 and more than 1 million died.
The President of the United States is defending the good name of Poland. Donald Trump's staff criticized Joe Biden for comparing Poland to Belarus in last week's town hall. The statement issued by the president's staff says that comparing Poland to Lukashenko's regime shows a lack of understanding in foreign policy.
Donald Trump's staff reacted strongly to the comparison between Poland and Belarus. Comparing Poland to Belarus is a sign of Biden's lack of understanding of foreign policy, not to mention the image of Americans of Polish origin. This is a sign that Donald Trump understands the situation in Poland a little better and understands better the need for change in Poland. Joe Biden criticized Poland for reforms in the justice system. In an interview with the Polish television, an American political scientist assessed that Biden, like many other American politicians, did not know that the Polish judiciary had not undergone a thorough reform after the fall of communism.
Most in the American media and even the parts of the liberal foreign policy establishment don't understand what the judiciary in Poland has been like over the last 30 years, or don't understand what the reasons were for that reform.
Biden's lack of understanding will probably not affect the relations between Washington and Warsaw. These relations have become significantly closer in recent years. Undoubtedly, it is a strong relationship based on issues of joint operations outside of Europe, but on the other hand, it is also joint interest in security and a certain security architecture in Europe. Additionally, the head of the Pentagon has just announced that it is possible to move additional US troops from Germany to Poland. Not only do they want to move some of their forces to Poland, but they even have to do it, because that is how it results from the defense doctrine, from the war doctrine, hard military data, that such a situation was much better in case of conflict for the American army. Meanwhile, the United States has just imposed sanctions on companies that would provide equipment or financial assistance to vessels laying the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, which is dangerous for Poland.
In Paris, a national tribute was held for the school teacher who was brutally murdered last week. The ceremony was attended to by the family of the victim and French President Emmanuel Macron. 16 people have already been arrested in relation to this case.
Hundreds of people came to the courtyard of the university in Paris to pay homage to the brutally murdered Samuel Paty. It is very important to show that we are united and will not allow such situations to happen again. The French President Emmanuel Macron, who also took part in the ceremony, also says never again. Samuel Paty will be posthumously awarded the National Order of the Legion of Honor. We thought we were living in a free country, a free society, but this is not true. I have no words to express how I feel now. According to the Parisian commentators, the French services did not rise to the challenge. For a year already, they were supposed to know that the 18-year-old Chechen, the perpetrator of the attack, could pose a threat. All the more so because he had previously applied for asylum in Poland. He did not receive it here, but in France he did. The services have already detained 16 people in connection with the attack. According to their testimony, the attacker who cut off the teacher's head was preparing for this attack for many days. The French authorities launched a series of actions against Islamic terrorism and promised war against the enemies of their country. But many people believe that this was decided definitely too late.
The entire event lasted only 5 seconds, but it was years in the making. NASA has achieved a historic feat. The mission of the OSIRIS probe on the Bennu asteroid was a success. By using a mechanical arm and a touch-and-go maneuver, the probe took a sample of the asteroid to be returned to Earth.
The OSIRIS probe sent by NASA drilled into the Bennu asteroid and took samples of rocks and dust that will be sent to Earth. This will be probably the largest sample brought from space since the Apollo mission. The material may allow to determine the origins of the Earth and our solar system. NASA assumes that the probe will deliver samples weighing between 60 grams and 2 kilograms. We will have to wait for OSIRIS to return to Earth. The probe will again be in orbit around the Bennu asteroid and will wait for proper conditions to return home. It is estimated that the appropriate window will open only in March 2021. The return to Earth will take more than 2 years.
Jason DeCaraz Taylor is a British artist who always seeks depth in his art, and he finds it at the bottom of the sea. The sculptor specializes in creating underwater museums where he places his works of art.
These are images of Cannes residents made by Chisel. At the end of November, they will hit the bottom of the Ligurian Sea, where they will create an underwater eco-gallery. Their works are made of cement with water-neutral pH. This is to allow for the deposition on the sculptures of algae, starfish and corals. Underwater museums, as the artist explains, is a kind of tribute paid to the seas and oceans suffering from climate change. Coffee stimulates, in this case, certainly the imagination. So the artist Ohud Abdallah Al-Malki created the world's largest coffee painting. She was the first woman from her country to be included in the Guinness Book of World Records. The painting depicting the rulers of the Gulf states measures 220 square meters. Work on it took 45 days without an interruption. Despite the pandemic, they did not switch to remote mode. On the contrary, the British royal couple does not rest on their laurels. Recently, they could be seen at the London Waterloo station. Kate and William inaugurated an exhibition on the best photographs selected from among 30,000 sent as part of the Hold Still action organized by the Duchess. All works depict the British during the pandemic. It's a boy. This happy news of the birth of the little gorilla was shared with the world by the Boston Zoo. He is the first male representative of this species to be born in this zoo. The birth took place by a C-section. His mother, 39-year-old Kiki, is doing well, and after less than a day she could take her baby in her arms. It was her first son after she gave birth to 4 daughters. Passengers in a hurry to catch the train are an everyday image on platforms. However, seeing a mighty red kangaroo jumping in that place is a huge sensation. Such an event occurred at the Canberra metro station. The kangaroo can cover 8 meters in one jump. It jumped on the platform like an express train, and despite such speed, it did not even lose its bag.
Back in port, and a lot to be proud of. Less than 4 days were spent battling with the wind and water. After 600 kilometers, the crew of the yacht I Love Poland, the first in its class, crossed the finish line of the prestigious regatta around Sicily.
The interior is modest and the conditions for the crew are not that comfortable. But on the yacht I Love Poland, this is not the most important thing. The most important is performance. In many cases and in different conditions we are able to sail faster than the wind, and this is quite unattainable for most yachts. Excellent performance on water results in excellent sports achievements. The I Love Poland crew crossed the finish line of the regatta around Sicily as the first in their class. On board, among others, graduates of sailing courses organized by the Polish National Foundation. This is another race where the graduates of these courses are crew members. The participation of such a yacht in the most important sailing events is a recipe for promoting Poland. We try to perform as well as possible and everywhere it is possible, whether on land or in direct competition on water. We represent our country with dignity. Only this year, the crew of I Love Poland stood on the regatta podium 7 times.
And now let's take a look at Michał Rachon's interview with American publicist Matthew Tyrmand.
Wczoraj na antenie Fox News, dziś minęła 20. Matthew Tyrmand, American journalist of Polish origin, Polish citizen as well. Welcome to minęła 20. Welcome to Poland.
Pleasure to be here, Michał, as always.
Matthew, American public opinion was informed about the content of Hunter Biden's laptop. FBI is in possession of the laptop, and they say that it belongs to Hunter Biden. The laptop contained emails revealing his foreign business dealings, including contacts in Ukraine and in China. Could you walk us through this story and tell us how will it affect the presidential campaign?
Sure. In short, and this has been a saga, the laptop was dropped off at a Delaware repair shop, ostensibly by Hunter Biden, and he left it there, and that laptop found its way to Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon, who have been exposing the emails, the pictures, and the different pieces of incriminating evidence on it. The influence that this is going to have on the campaign is it demonstrates how deep the cronyism and international corruption that was occurring with Biden Jr. and his partners has been opened up so that Americans can see it. Many eyes have been opened, and it shows how compromised Joe Biden is to be assuming the biggest role on earth when it comes to political power as president. His son and his son's partners were doing business in Russia, Ukraine, China, Kazakhstan, probably many other places we don't yet know about. This is a modern-day axis of international business corruption, and this is compromise, as the Russians and the KGB say, that these players have on Hunter and his partners, and this effectively weakens Joe from negotiating with any of them beyond his already diminished mental faculties and very soft brain that we have been able to see this entire campaign.
Matthew, you broke another stunning story. You are the person who has an access to one of Hunter Biden's cooperators' Gmail account. What's in those emails, and what is this part of story? By the way, congratulations, it's a big story.
Oh. Yeah, it's a big story, and you know, I'm trying to get as much stuff out as I can. So I was able to get access to Bevan Cooney, who was Hunter Biden and Devon Archer's business partner, and he actually went to jail. And Hunter is not. Devon Archer's case was dismissed, which has been reopened because of how glaringly unjust that was. So I got access to these email accounts, and you know, Bevan wanted to expose the corruption after seeing how they traded on Joe Biden's name and got high-level access. The U.S. ambassador in Beijing, Max Backus, who was an Obama appointee, they were doing deals in his office in Beijing with Chinese-connected, CCP-connected, quote-unquote, business people, state-owned enterprise business people. They were obtaining White House meetings with Joe for their business components. And, of course, they had never registered as lobbyists, and this was effectively foreign influence peddling. So they were doing deals with some very bad people. They were bringing the Kazakh foreign minister around D.C. Kazakhstan is a very corrupt country. And obviously Burisma in Ukraine, which we have discussed, you and I, in the past. And then the story that I've been breaking and pushing forward a lot because I think it's very important is the money laundering that they did for a Russian oligarch tied to the Kremlin and the Moscow mayor's wife, Yelena Baturina. They got her a JP Morgan account so that she could get her money out of Russia and Europe and into the U.S. to invest it and, so to speak, clean it. And this was going on while the Maidan was happening and the Crimean annexation. So Russians were very nervous. They really wanted to get their money into the U.S. and away from where it could be clawed back via sanctions later on because of the Russian activity in Ukraine and Crimea.
Well, we've been following the Hunter Biden and Aleksander Kwaśniewski connection on various occasions. Is there anything about former Polish president in those emails that you have access to?
But of course, Michał, of course there is. He is mentioned several times, especially when Burisma holds their board meetings in Warsaw, which they did. And Kwaśniewski has famously stated that having Biden on the board was a good thing because of his father, but also that Hunter knew much about corporate governance and capital markets and energy equipment. And I can tell you categorically from going through these emails, Hunter knew nothing about any of these subjects. And so they reference Kwaśniewski because he's another, big figure, the former president of Poland. So they try and trade on that. They've got access to guys like this that they can bring around internationally to help their businesses. And, we know his history. He was all too happy to be part of the same kind of crony business projects, both while president and then certainly after president. The Burisma board was a hotbed of very dirty people.
Matthew, one more thing. We have a tweet of Radosław Sikorski, former Polish foreign minister, who says that interesting Polish connection to the hatchet job of Joe Biden. The person publishing the emails, Matthew Tyrmand, is a former advisor to the nationalist government in Warsaw, and he's posting some photographs of you with the Polish politicians. What's your answer to Radosław Sikorski?
Well, as I tweeted, his obsession with me is rather unhealthy. I mean, he's supposed to be a happily married man, but he keeps posting pictures of me and talking about me, which at the same time, he's blocked me on Twitter, so I cannot rebut any of his ridiculous allegations or stupid comments. He's a buffoon. He's not a statesman. A statesman would actually want to have an open dialogue about these things. Calling a hatchet job, exposing corruption, he's got an agenda. He's also had some things exposed in recent years, so he gets very, very defensive of, people he knows on the global left. This wasn't a hard left guy for until recently. He was a right-wing guy, but he's moved to the left, and that's where global corruption, I think, really, really lives, is this global technocratic, supranational governance technocrats who want to control business and politics, and they get wealthy doing so. I think, it's deplorable that he would make so many comments about me. We know this is not a hatchet job. This is prima facie evidence. We're getting the evidence straight from the sources. Bevan Cooney, Hunter's laptop. So he's acting like the Washington Post, his wife's imprint, and the New York Times, where they say nothing to see here. Don't believe your lying eyes. Just trust us. It's a Soviet mentality, just like we see from Brussels, from Berlin, from Stockholm when they talk about migrant immigrant resettlement problems. You just don't trust your lying eyes. So he's a buffoon. I think most Poles know that. There's a reason why he does not have much power, and he's relegated to Twitter complaining about people like me.
Matthew, my final question. Joe Biden turned against Poland again, putting Poland alongside Belarusian regime and using a phrase totalitarian regarding Poland. Trump's campaign managers condemned Biden for this. How will this affect Polish-American voters in the upcoming election in Europe? We've got 45 seconds.
Okay. Well, Bill and Hillary Clinton did make similar comments during the campaign in 2016, and we ran that out pretty hard when Poland had already moved to the right. Look, the left is at war with the conservative nationalist populist movement all over the globe. Any party or government further right than they are get referred to in such terms, and this has lost meaning. They have lost credibility given the scale of mandates the movements for national sovereignty have won. Unaccountable global bureaucrats and technocrats in Brussels, D.C., London, etc., they don't care at all about the common man, and the populist right does, and the people get that. Citizens want their governments to represent their interests, not those interests of globalists who are happy to be in bed with China for personal wealth as jobs and wages are degraded and destroyed in the West. Polish Americans coming out of 50 years of communism get this, and they support Trump greatly. The Warsaw speech was impactful, showed the people that he is on their side, and their concerns are his concerns. He's going to win in a landslide, and the Polonia vote will play a big role in major swing states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, and maybe even Connecticut, and many other states. So I think that, they overplay their hand, and the people reject and rebel, and that's what we're seeing from 2008 to after 2008 to the Brexit movement, Trump movement, and all the national sovereignty movements winning power in Europe now.
Matthew Tyrmand, from the very middle of the big story in the American presidential campaign on last 12 days of the campaign. Thank you very much for your time.
And that concludes our show for the evening. Tune in tomorrow for the presidential debate in Polish live on tvp.info and a special edition afterwards. I will see you again the day after. Take care and good night.